and welcome back to the National League Rugby Preview Show, powered by Talking Rugby Union, where every Thursday we look to bring you the headlines, the talking points, all the big moments ahead of a National League Rugby weekend. And we aim to put clubs further in the spotlight and give them a bit of a platform so people who like National League Rugby or just rugby fans in general can go down to their local National League Rugby club and experience what levels 3 and 4 are all about. And again, it is free to watch on YouTube. So please like the video, subscribe to our channel, share with whoever you like. It all helps with the algorithms, which again, I don't understand still. I need to get my head around them, but it just boosts the profile of National 1 and National 2 and what we are doing as a National League Rugby media team to put those leagues in the spotlight. And just because we are sort of 2 weeks into the show, we have had obviously a lot of feedback in terms of the couple of episodes we have put together. We do really appreciate the comments, both positive and constructive. We are a very small team at National League Rugby in terms of the media side of things. So time sometimes isn't on our side, but we are listening, we are reading your comments, and we will keep working hard in order to keep on pushing the profile of National 1 and National 2. But thank you so much for everyone who has engaged with the show. It is much appreciated. So with all of that out the way, once again, I'm delighted to say I am joined by the assistant editor of the rugby paper, Ben Jaycock, for this round 3 episode. Ben, thanks so much for joining us again. And when you were putting the paper together for sort of Sunday morning, how did you kind of reflect on the Derby weekend and all the match reports you were getting sent through?
Yeah, no, thanks for having me on again, Chris. Yeah, very enjoyable. I thought it was an excellent weekend. Some fantastic derbies, across the 4 leagues. Some brilliant crowds. I think what really has surprised me is how unpredictable it all is. You kind of earmark going into each match thinking, okay, well, yeah, they should win on paper, and it hasn't really panned out like that. And there's a lot of very tight games as well. Games where if we've seen this weekend with a winning drop goal or a last minute try or things, the entertainment value across all 4 divisions is fantastic. So yeah, really, really enjoyable weekend, and yeah, looking forward to the next round as well.
Yeah, you really good point you make there, Ben, really on the attendances. I mean, just wanted to kind of read out sort of 4 of the highest attendances, which were obviously we got sent through as National League Rugby, but obviously they are in the rugby paper as well. The attendances were nearly 2,500 people, Ben, were up Red Roof. I mean, we expected, didn't we, a big crowd for that Cornish derby, but that's a brilliant crowd, isn't it, to get down there in round 2 of the season.
It's absolutely incredible. Yeah, it wasn't the only one that took me by surprise, but you always do, yeah, expect a 4-figure crowd for that match, but to get 2,500, which is I think a lot of championship clubs would be happy with that figure. I mean, we're talking level 4 rugby early in the season as well. It's just an amazing turnout, and shows how much of a rugby heartland that the Southwest really is. They love their rugby down there, and it was an amazing atmosphere, and a really good occasion and a great game as well, with obviously the visitors coming out on top.
Yeah, it's a really, really good atmosphere down at the recreation ground, and Campbell putting in excellent performances, as you say there, Ben, to come out on top in the latest meeting between the 2 sides. Just a few other attendances. The Lancashire Derby, we highlighted it last week, expected kind of a big attendance for that one, nearly 1,500 people for Up Woodlands for Fyle versus Preston. A bit of a dramatic finish there with Fyle clinching the win 2 minutes from time. National 1's highest attendance was at Esher, which was really good, just over 4 figures for that one, for their game against Rams, the first home game back in National 1 after a year away. And Taunton were very, very close to getting 1,000 for their first home fixture of the season against Hornets. So going back to your point there, Ben, it's across the board. So we're showing that at all levels of National League Rugby there's a big appetite for it.
Yeah, definitely. There's a really big demand for fans to go and watch their local team, but also the away fans as well. There's a lot of visiting supporters that have made the journey over. I'm sure there's a lot of Camborne fans in that game, like you mentioned, Preston and Fylde, obviously being so close to each other. A lot of fans coming over. And it's great to see. They're really impressive crowds, and they're taking people by surprise. And hopefully that continues throughout the campaign, because it makes a big difference when there's a really good, strong atmosphere around a game.
Yeah, yeah, couldn't agree more. Those Camborne fans would have been packed behind one of the ends to the recreation ground on Saturday to cheer their team home. And a big thank you, by the way, to Red Roof, to Nigel Hamley, and to Sheffield Tigers and to Jack Howison for their time last week as part of our feature games in the preview show. We are hoping that one of our feature games this week will be Richmond versus Darlington Mowden Park in National One, but more to come on that later. And I guess potentially, Ben, Richmond is a fantastic place to begin looking back at round two before we look ahead to round three. You mentioned it sort of tentatively at the start in terms of last minute drop goals, and that was where it was. Richmond's Lewis Dennett keeping his cool to steal the victory for Richmond at Roslin Park. The second year in a row they've done that in terms of winning it late on, and I think there's no better way to win a derby, is there?
No, and definitely a really fierce London derby like that one. I mean, Richmond are on fire. They're looking already one of the front runners. They started slow last year and kind of faded away, but this year they seem right on it. And speaking to people at the club, they don't want to be at this level. They want to get back into the championship, and they're showing that what they're made of. Everyone kind of expects Roslin Park to be in there and thereabouts. They've pushed close the last few years. They probably arguably should have gone up to it. I think it was 2 seasons ago when they were really in the mix. But yeah, Lewis Dennett, ice cool to score that drop goal. An amazing match. Great to see, and yeah, Richmond will be absolutely buzzing with that result as they look forward to build on their title push.
They'll be delighted. And it's two away wins as well, if I'm right in saying, for Rob Powell's side after beating Blackheath on the opening day of the season. So really strong start to the season. And I'll give you credit, Ben. You did mention them in terms of a potential title push, top spot push when we did the first show. So they are sticking true to your word at the moment, aren't they, Richmond? So
They are. It's a long season ahead though, so I can't get too carried away just yet. And there's a lot of good sides in National One that we fighting. I like the look of Rotherham Titans, Birmingham Moseley already are looking strong. Yeah, I think that across the board there's going to be a really competitive league, and great to see again that the promoted sides are giving it a really good go. We saw how well Blackheath and Leicester Lions and other sides that have come up to National One in recent years have done well. Dings Crusaders are looking strong, and well, I'm sure we're touching it soon, but Rotherham Titans are on fire at the minute.
well, let's touch on it now, shall we, Ben, in terms of some of the other talking points from round two. Rotherham, you mentioned, absolutely on fire at the moment. They put in a brilliant first half performance away at Darlington Mowden Park. Blackheath did something very similar away at Bishop Stortford as well. So first half performance is setting the platform for both. But you mentioned Rotherham again. I know we've kind of mentioned them a lot in the first 2 weeks of the season because they're back in National One. We know they're such a big club, the following they get, the structure they've got now there with Harvey Billion leading things. But I don't think they could have wished for a better start to the season, could they?
No, yeah, taking maximum points. Yeah, that away trip up to Darlington is always a difficult task for teams because they're easier, a hard place to go. Really good, strong defense. Gary Law leads a very good operation there. But yeah, that they blew them away, and they're scoring points for fun. They've got a fantastic coach, like you mentioned, in Harvey Billion, who's got championship title winning experience. They're not here to make up the numbers.
Yeah, they're certainly not here to make up the numbers, as you quite rightly say, Ben. Based on the first 2 weekends of the season, an excellent start to the campaign for Rotherham. Just in terms of any other thoughts, talking points really from round two, Ben, feel free to add your thoughts onto mine. Another good win for Rams. They beat Esher away from home. It was double delight really for three of their players. Max Heyman again amongst the tries. That's 5 in 2 games for the new club captain. Morgan McRae coming off the bench to score twice, and Thomas Pozniak against his former club, the winger, scoring a double for Rams against Esher. So a good win for Rams going into what will be a big fixture this weekend. We'll come on to that in a second against Sale FC, who got a nip and tuck win in the Manchester derby, a really tight game at Hayward Road, but 2 wins from 2 for Sale as well. And yeah, some really good wins for both of those clubs, Ben.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, funny you mentioned Thomas Pozniak. He was actually at Wimbledon last year and was very impressive. I know they eventually, unfortunately, got relegated after a long battle in National Two East, but he was a real standout player, scoring tries of fun. So that's a really good signing by Rams and already proving his worth. And Isha is yes, they've just been promoted and they've have kind of yo-yo between National One and National Two in recent years, but you know, their home ground is a bit of a fortress for them. So that was a difficult place to go for Rams, and it ended a very long home unbeaten run for Isha. And yeah, Rams continue to look very good. I think they're definitely going to be in amongst the title contenders this year. You know, other, like I mentioned, newly promoted Dings, you know, scoring 46 points in a comfortable win over Plymouth Albion. Well, yeah, it's, you know, any victory that has the word comfortable in front of against Plymouth is very impressive. I mean, that Steen Williams is doing some really impressive stuff there. Like you mentioned, Blackheath maintaining their impressive away form with a dominant first half display at Bishop Stortford. That, you know, taking no prisoners on the road. Just need to fix their home form, to be honest, and then they'll be right up in amongst it. And yeah, Birmingham Moseley, really impressive clinical finishing away performance at Leicester Lions, 21 points to 7. That was an impressive win because, you know, a lot of sides did come unstuck last season, certainly in the second half of the campaign at Leicester. So yeah, Birmingham looking very good under Adam Balding already.
Yeah, definitely, Ben. Just to pick up on what you said about the Dings Plymouth game. Yeah, we mentioned Dings Crusaders in the National League Rugby wrap-up, which went out on Tuesday morning. Fantastic win for them. They've continued that brilliant home record they've got at Shaftesbury Park, which obviously was a big factor in them winning the league last year in National 2 West. A lot of the Bristol Bears boys, obviously, they've got a fantastic connection with Bristol Bears, and Pat Lam very much buying into the fact that these players need game time. So your likes of Joe Jenkins, your Harry Rowsons, people like that who are on loan at Dings, really shining in that victory against Plymouth Albion. But just on Plymouth as well, Ben, you mentioned that, you know, anyone saying a comfortable win against Albion it's not really heard of, isn't it? Given Plymouth, they had such a strong season last year, that I know they're very disappointed with the way they started. And actually, this morning, just looking at Instagram, Ryan Lamb, the director of rugby, head coach at Albion's, come out with a pretty passionate statement, sort of saying, look, we know it's been a frustrating start to the season, but really urging the fans, the supporters, everyone connected to the club to stand by them, because he's so confident that they can turn things around. So for Ryan to come out and say that, I think it's a very passionate statement, and also one which I think a lot of the Plymouth players, the Plymouth supporters will listen to and fully get behind, hopefully.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Plymouth have got probably one of the biggest support bases in National One. You know, it means a lot to them. You know, their rugby side. They've been, you know, bar last season, it was you know, sort of bottom half finishes. They were kind of looked like a little bit underachieving. But last season they were very impressive. And I'm sure supporters and the players and the coaches, they all know that they need to start playing better rugby than they are at the minute. Once they get going, I think they will be up there in the mix at the top. They just need to get the first win on the board and then build from there. I mean, going to Plymouth is a really hard place to go, and you know, once they get there, kind of turn that back into a bit of a fortress, I think they'll be okay. But no, I like the statement. I like it's very transparent towards the supporters. And yeah, Ryan Lamb's always a very honest and open guy, and says it how it is. And I think he admits that, you know, they need, their fortunes need to change, and that the fans deserve better.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely spot on what you say, Ben. Transparent is the right word to use. With Ryan's statement, it is on Plymouth Albion social media channels if anybody does want to check it out. And Plymouth will be eager to get off the mark in round 3. Just a quick one, we didn't do it last week, but we are going to show the tables this week in terms of how everybody, where the lay of the land lies, should I say, after just 2 fixtures. And we've got 5 teams who have won 2 games from 2. We've mentioned sort of Richmond and Rotherham there in 5th and 4th place. Rams and Sale FC, the only 2 clubs to pick up a full maximum of 10 points from 10. Birmingham Moseley also in the leading pack as it stands. Leicester Lions are the only team without a point to their name so far. We've touched on Plymouth still searching for their first win of the campaign. But just while we've got the table up there, Ben, is there any sort of surprises for you so far? But obviously we touched on it. Rotherham sitting in the top 5 might be a bit of a surprise, but Rams, Birmingham, Moseley, Richmond towards that top end last year, weren't they? And they sit there after just 2 rounds.
Yeah, I think yeah, bar Rotherham, there's not really many surprises there at all. Like those clubs that you mentioned, you expected them to be up there, but yeah, fair play to Rotherham. They're in the mix, like we just mentioned, and yeah, who knows what can happen from there. But yeah, pre-season title contenders seem like they're illustrating their credentials. You know, look at Richmond. Birmingham Moseley aside, I rate very highly. Yeah, Blackheath as well will be pushing and then knocking on the door as well.
Really interesting stuff very early on in the season. So standings will swap and change, no doubt, over the next couple of months or so. But that's how National One looks at the moment going into round 3. And we mentioned one of those teams that are right up there with 2 wins from 2, and that is Richmond. And that is our featured club this week, certainly in National One. And this week we were lucky enough to chat to CEO of the club, Neil Darke. Now, Neil was appointed as a full-time CEO of Richmond earlier in the summer. His affiliation with the club is for well over 20 years. He was a player, he was a volunteer coach, trustee, and a board director. He had taken on the interim role as CEO at the end of February this year, but has now got the full-time role at Richmond. So after 2 wins from 2, it was always going to be nice to chat to someone from Richmond. And here's what Neil had to say about the club, and also, as we mentioned there, the excellent start to the season the club have had. And as you can see, I am pleased to say that I am joined by Richmond CEO Neil Darke on the National League Rugby Preview Show. Neil, thanks so much for joining us, and welcome to the show.
Very, very, very glad to be here, Chris.
Just myself and Ben were having a chat just before we got you on about sort of the start to the season Richmond have had this season. But before we get into that, Neil, if I'm right in saying you were appointed as Richmond's full-time CEO in the summer after doing the role for a short interim basis at the start of the year. So just tell us what it means to you to be CEO of the club, Neil, because I know you have such a strong affiliation with Richmond, over 20 years, is that right?
Yeah, I've been a member, player, coach, Minnie's chairman. It's a bit like the Fawlty Tower sketch, isn't it? Where he's sort of doing multiple roles. But I joined the board just over a year ago, and the board asked me to step in as interim CEO in about March. And I enjoyed the role so much, I thought I'd stick around, and they were very kind enough to want to have me stick around. So I'm delighted to be here. It's a fantastic honour, obviously, being the CEO of world's second oldest rugby club, one of the originals in rugby, pioneers in all areas of the game, women's rugby, professional rugby. We're even pioneers in going bankrupt, Chris. You know, first club to go bankrupt over 25 years ago.
Yeah, and you know, when we were swapping texts this morning, Neil, we were talking about what we were going to chat about in the interview, and you also kind of put in the yellow, black, and red heart emojis to represent Richmond. So it's quite clear how much the club means to you as a whole. And as you touched on there, you've worn many, many hats during your years at the club as well.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, it is. Much to the annoyance sometimes of my wife, I suspect. But let's not go there, shall we, Chris? My not Minnie's, youth parents now. The sort of in-joke with the youth parents, because often they'll come down on a Saturday and see me at the game and whatnot, and then on Sunday morning I'm here early, getting the session prepped for Sunday morning, and they're like, "Are you sleeping in the sheds, Neil?" So there's become a bit of an in-joke that I live in the sheds at Richmond. But there you go. So I'm spending quite a lot of time down there, even more so now.
A true rugby man, then, Neil. True rugby man.
Do you know what? We ran a workshop last week, Chris, just talking about social impact that we have in the community and what rugby means to people. And like a workshop is, I thought I'd go first. What does rugby mean to me? If I think about it, rugby, I was at university and I was up your part of the world on my placement year, and I met somebody up there through rugby who eventually got me my first job post university. So it got me my career started in London, and then I came to London. I originally played at London Welsh because I'm Welsh. And through London Welsh and through the friendships I've made there, my gang met a gang of lovely young ladies, and one of those lovely young ladies is now my wife. So, whether it's my career or whether it's my wife, rugby's played a big part in my life. So, yeah, it's a sport I love, it's a club I love, and anything I can do to give back is what I'm trying to do.
Yeah. So when you were thinking about potentially becoming the full-time CEO of the club then, Neil, was that kind of, I don't want to be crass about it, but an easy decision for you because of how much rugby's giving you in terms of shaping everything that you've done?
It was an easy decision on that basis, Chris. It was sort of like I'm lucky enough to have been retired for a couple of years, so the less easy decision was kind of unretiring. But sort of if there was ever something to unretire, I thought this is it. So it was an easy decision on that basis. More difficult, obviously, talking about the family and so on and so forth. But because I know what a commitment it is. But from I've loved being the CEO for the last few months. Hope I've made a bit of a difference, and hope I can make a much bigger difference going forward.
Yeah, because we could have a laugh and a joke about your commitment and spending so much time at the club, Neil. But for people who don't possibly know this, in terms of a role as a CEO at a club, I guess you are having to deal with different obstacles, different challenges every single day because, we aren't talking about the top level of rugby here. We are still talking about National One. So I guess, every single day you're thinking, how do we improve in certain different sectors of the club? Not just what we love, the 80 minutes on the field and seeing the first team trot out and put in performances. I guess there's so many different things that go into your role as a CEO.
Yeah, well, it's a business, isn't it? We are a business. We are lucky enough to have an amazing ground that you can see in the background. I've been going back, joking aside, going back to our history and back in the late 90s when the club went bust, obviously embraced professionalism, brought in an outside investor, went bust, and then refound its soul and grew again from the bottom up. But also, as along that journey, the club changed its constitution, so it could never do that again. It could never sell its soul to an outside investor. And so our sugar daddy, so to speak, is the ground that you see behind you, and therefore we have to make the ground, more. Have more events and host more more things here, which would deliver greater income for the rugby side of the club. So we have to live within our means. Our constitution demands it, and therefore what you see behind you is our sugar daddy. We've got to make the most of it, which will then help us fund not just the first team, men's team. We've got a women's section, we've got a minis and junior section. We do preschool, we do walking rugby, we do adult touch rugby. We do lots of things now, which is more than just a sort of vanilla, adult male sort of rugby club. Trying to become a more inclusive club, much better connected to the community. We've got an in-house community team who deliver coaching to 20+ local schools. We love it. We love to host schools in various tournaments here, to utilize the facilities, and hopefully be a very big part of the local sporting community.
And part of the reason why we kind of decided to go down this vision this season, Neil, of doing the preview show is something you touched on there. It's about drawing more people towards the local rugby clubs. And I know where you guys are situated, that can present its own challenges. I know obviously the Stoop's only down the road, that big thing called the Alliance. I've got to remember to call it the Alliance now. It's not too far away. Roslyn Park's the other side as well. Ealing's not too far away. So does that, how much of your thinking, your day-to-day is all about trying to get people through the gate on a Saturday, or whether it's parents coming down with the kids on a Sunday or events in midweek? Because it's quite clearly across the board in National League Rugby that all of these clubs want to be parts of their community as much as they can be.
Yeah, look, I think we are no different from rugby clubs generally, in that we need to attract younger audiences. So appealing to younger people, younger fans, getting fans engaged, appealing to not just adult males, whether that's women, whether that's the kids, whether that's older people who've stopped playing. So that's a very key part of our plan here, is to how do we reinvent our club to be a bigger, broader, more inclusive club. Because otherwise, like rugby clubs and rugby generally, it'll wither on the vine with an aging decreasing membership. And that's a challenge I think that all rugby clubs have got. I mean, we are in a very competitive rugby landscape. As you mentioned, we've got, London Welsh that way, we've got Rosslyn Park that way, we've got Twickenham, Teddington, further down the road, you've got Ealing and Esher, and there's all sorts of clubs around here. So that's both a strength, i.e. that we are in a rugby hotbed, but also it's a challenge in that, competing for minis, for example, there's probably 8 clubs within a couple of miles of this club. So you've got to, what are you offering? What are you offering those parents and kids to differentiate yourself? So that's always a challenge.
Yeah, and I guess, proactiveness is probably top of the agenda with that, Neil. I think everyone now certainly in rugby has to be proactive, don't they, in terms of if they want to grow and take those next steps forward.
Yes, absolutely. But look, so we've got the Women's World Cup next year. Now, you might not know this, but a little stat for you, which is the Women's World Cup was conceived in the Bar, which is about 200 yards that way, by 4 Richmond women in the late 1980s. So we've got we are literally the home of women's rugby. So that's a big opportunity for us as a club to engage lots of potential new audience, young girls, women, but also young boys who can see that this is a very inclusive sport and not just a sport for sort of fat old men, really. So fantastic opportunity. Obviously the finals down the road. We'll be looking to run events here to showcase the girls and women's game, showcase our own club, hopefully get new people engaged with the sport. So yeah, the sport has got to work together, hasn't it? So clubs have got to work together to sort of grow the sport, because we can all try to eat each other's lunch and try to nick players, but actually what we want to do is attract more players, of all genders, shapes and sizes to the game, really. And that's a kind of, to use a bit of a cliche, it's a bit of a team effort, isn't it, really?
Yeah, and it sounds like, listening to you, Neil, that's kind of the vision Richmond has overall, that team effort in order to drive more people through the gates, get more people playing rugby, get more people coming to your place to enjoy the game we all love. But this is the National League Rugby Preview Show, so I'm going to have to talk about just the first team for a little bit, Neil. And I know you mentioned earlier on that you were down at the club last week, I think, for the season ahead event, and you were potentially outlining your short-term, your long-term visions for the club. So given where Richmond have been over the last couple of years, Neil, are you able to give us a bit of an insight into where you'd like the club to be in potentially the short term, this season, the next couple of years, or is that a difficult one to say at the moment?
No, look, I mean, so at the event last week, we had our senior head of rugby, Rob Powell, talk about the men's section and the club. So he wears 2 hats. He's the men's head coach as well as the head of rugby, and we have the women's head coach. Look, we'd like to finish up as high up National 1 as possible. Last year we were 6th. We lost 8 games, I think, by less than a score. So winning those close games could make such a difference. So Rob and I and the team, working as hard as we can on all of the details, not just on the pitch. Obviously, I don't control what goes on the pitch, but in terms of the environment and what the support we're offering the players and the staff and the medical team and so on, to those little bits of detail that we can hopefully then turn, and as you saw at the weekend, with our last minute drop goal win over Rosslyn Park, it's a very competitive league. The week before, we won by a couple more points, but not that many. And there'll be lots of close games this season. So those bits of detail, are important. We're trying to create an environment, a culture, for everyone here, for players, for staff, for supporters, for minis and youth, that they want, that is a welcoming environment for people that can have positive experiences. There's some good values at the club. We live those values. The players. One of our values is we care. Now, as was evident last Saturday, we spent most of the second half defending. Okay. Our defence was amazing. And part of what goes behind that is the culture and the fact that the guys care. So I don't know how many tackles they made, but it was a lot, and we defended and we had, 2 phases in the opposition half, all second half. But we only conceded 5 points, and we ended up winning the game. And you could see what that meant. And if you've seen the clips, Chris, you see what it meant to the players. When Lewis put the drop goal over, they were all running around. You had Caden Murley on the sideline, who's the coach here. It is Richmond stash, charging on the field with the players with a big huddle. So, there's a very good culture at the moment. And we're not complacent about that. We're very pleased with that. That's something to build on. And that comes back to the sort of value system that sits underneath that, doesn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, because me and Ben have been getting carried away just before we got you on for our interview, Neil, about the start of the season you guys have had, and we've been going, oh, could they, be targeting the promotion, looking at the championship and stuff like that. But listening to you, it feels like the environment, the values, the team ethic have to come first. They have to be the foundation before you can start dreaming of potentially getting back to where the club was.
Look, I'm going to sound like a cliche here.
No, please do.
Talking about, look, it's all about the process, isn't it? And you get the process right, and generally good things happen. Focus on the process. Let's not focus on the outcome. Focus on the process, and the process is very, very good at the moment. Rob and his squad have had a good pre-season. They've recruited well. They've got a good vibe going. We've had 2 tough away games against local rivals, big fixtures. Not the ideal start for the season, away to Blackheath, away to Rosslyn Park. We've managed to come out on top in both games now. We've got a home game on Saturday against DMP. Big game, first home game of the season. Can't be complacent. One of the challenges I suspect Rob's going to have this week is people thinking, well, Darlington have lost both games. The first 2 games, quite badly. So people might be thinking this is a bit of a shoeing. But nothing's, as Chris, you see the results every week. You kind of go, how do they even, there's always a surprise. Because it's a very competitive league. So you can't assume anything. People are buying into what Rob is doing on the pitch and what we're doing off the pitch. I want to be part of it. It's an amazing club to be part of. And I'm delighted that people want to be part of it.
Yeah, you're quite rightly talking about sort of Saturday there, Neil. That you mentioned the start of the season, you guys have had those 2 tough away wins. And I know last year, I think you guys lost away at Blackheath. So that's kind of a tick in the box. And I think I'm right in saying not to bring it up, Neil, but I'm going to have to. The 2 games against Darlington last year, I don't think went the way of Richmond either. So going back to your point there, if you are able to turn those narrow losses that you might have had last year into these victories, that's only going to be another positive step forward for what you're building on the pitch, isn't it?
Absolutely. As I say, you can't take anything for granted in this league. The guys, as I say, have had 2 good wins. They've worked hard in training. They've worked hard in pre-season. Now we've got an opportunity on Saturday, first home game of the season. Forecast is meant to be good. The pitches are looking amazing. Grounds team have done an outstanding job over the summer. Hopefully our fans will come. We'll have a lovely pre-match hospitality lunch. We've got our new front of shirt sponsors, Raw Capital Partners, the unveiling of their new shirt. So all very excited for the first home game of the season.
Yeah, I was just going to come on to kind of your new sponsors, Neil. It is the first home game for Richmond of the campaign. Is that kind of sort of part of the plans that, you talked about sort of the plans that you've got for the club moving forward, but is it getting someone like Raw Capital Partners, your new sponsors on board, that it all goes towards that bigger plan that you do have for the club?
Absolutely. No, it's the first front of shirt sponsor we've had for a few years. We're delighted that Raw have come on board. They're sponsoring the whole club. So it's the first front of shirt sponsors I think the club's ever had, which is across the men, the women, and the youth, boys and girls. We've just bought 4 sets of shirts for all the youth girls age groups, all nicely branded. So no, that's we're delighted to welcome Raw on board. They were here for our season ahead. They are our match day sponsor at our first home game, as we obviously look to sort of unveil them as our sponsors, unveil the shirt. We've got a nice PR shot. They've got some branded post protectors, so we're going to get a nice shot with all the the men, the women, the boys, the girls, under the posts on Saturday. So hopefully they'll enjoy that. They'll enjoy their hospitality, and hopefully they'll enjoy the result as well.
Well, that's a very good reason for people to get down to the athletic ground, I think, Neil, on Saturday. The sun's shining, the pitches are looking great, a new sponsor to be unveiled. It sounds like it's going to be an absolutely
fun. We've got some new little things that we've got planned for the game. Make it make it feel a better vibe, really. So no, we're very excited. Very excited.
You can't reveal any of those plans, Neil, or is it a surprise till
you've got to come down and see. You've got to come down and see.
Right answer. Right answer.
Come down and see. Come down the Richmond Athletic Ground. More than welcome. Food, drink, good times.
So many thanks to Neil for his time. Really interesting to hear a bit of an insight to Richmond, as we talked about, or me and Ben have touched on. They are a club, probably an ambitious club, who want to try and get back to the Championship. They have been there very recently, but have made an excellent start to this season. So whether they will be up there towards the end of the season, we will wait and see. So Ben, let's have a quick look ahead to round 3. I mean, what is kind of jumping out the page for you? What fixtures are you going to be highlighting at the rugby paper as well going into this weekend?
Yeah, I think in terms of National 1, I don't think you can look past that Rams against Sale FC top of the table clash. Yeah, I mean, no one's really surprised that the Rams are up there, given their squad and how close they were to the title last year. But Sale FC were in a bit of a relegation battle last term, fighting for survival. They'll be gunning for this, and they've been a fantastic start to the season. And probably rightly so, given only 2 years ago they were in the promotion mix with alongside Rams. So I mean that's going to be a real test for them. That they'll this is kind of make it 3 wins on the bounce and knock off a promotion contender away from home. That'll be a really enthralling match to see. I think that's the standout.
It really is one of the standouts. I know we're kind of featuring Richmond versus Darlington Mowden Park this week, but in terms of other standout fixtures, I think Ben's right on the money with that one, Rams versus Sale FC. And just to pull up the fixtures now in front of us, yeah, Rams Sale FC just on that. 2 teams 100% start, and I think Rams would probably say that Sale FC are their bogey team. Sale have won the last 6 games between the 2 sides. They've won 3 straight wins. Picked up 3 straight wins, at Old Bath Road. So really interesting game, that one down in Berkshire. Elsewhere, just running from top to bottom, Blackheath versus Roslin Park, another London derby in round 3. Roslin Park itching to get off the mark after a disappointing start to the season for them. Richmond, Darlington, Mowden Park, we have mentioned. Rotherham versus Esher. I know we've touched on Rotherham already, but 2 newly promoted clubs meeting in Yorkshire. Titans 2 wins from 2 to begin the campaign, haven't lost at home in the last 16 games. That run actually stretches back to February 2023, so they'll be hoping that can continue against Esher, who've had a bit of contrasting fortune so far in National 1. Sedgley Park versus Dings Crusaders, excellent win, as Ben mentioned, for Dings in round 2 over Plymouth Albion. Sedge welcoming another newly promoted side to Park Lane after opening the campaign against Esher. Plymouth Albion versus Leicester Lions. Obviously, we've touched on that statement from Ryan Lamb this morning, the Tuesday morning, which was published on their social media channels. Really passionate message, and he'll be hoping that the support at Brickfields on Saturday will be able to galvanise his players against the Leicester Lions side, who are still looking for their first point of the campaign. And Birmingham Moseley versus Stortford to round things off, 2 wins from 2 for Adam Balding's side. Continuing where they left off last season, a really good campaign for them. Stortford on the road for the first time this campaign. So will they be able to pick up away day joy in round 3? So those are the fixtures in National 1. As we said, Richmond versus Darlington, Mowden Park is our feature game on the preview show. But as Ben quite rightly said, Rams versus Sale FC is one to look out for as well. But what to look out for in National 2 North is what we'll come on to, Ben. But let's have a look back at round 2 in National 2 North. You mentioned when you were putting the paper together that there's some really eye-catching, unpredictable scorelines. I think that might have been the case in National 2 North more so than most.
Yes, definitely. I mean, across the board, there was some really tight matches and results that went completely away from what I was thinking beforehand. So yeah, Hull Ionians, I think proved that form should be discounted in derbies. That's a huge win over Hull. That's really impressive. And like I mentioned, it was only Jersey Reds' unfortunate expulsion that kept Hull Ionians in the National Leagues. Well, you know, they've come out fighting this season and look really strong, and obviously they've turned a corner, it seems. And yeah, what better way to do it than in an emphatic derby victory over your arch rivals. Lim look on fire. You know, it's a rampant attacking display at Chester, which is always quite a difficult place to go. But they've started slow this season, so something's up. Something seems to be up there. It seems to going back from National 2 West into National 2 North should have really suited them. But yeah, questions need to be asked there, I think. Jordan Dorrington was the hero as Fylde just saw off Preston Grasshoppers late on. Wharfdale victorious over newly promoted Harrogate, who have given it a very good go early on. But Leeds Tykes pushed very hard to just beat Otley. I mean, that proves the difficulty of National 2 North as a whole, that Leeds almost became unstuck this early on. And Tyndale and Billingham sharing the points at Corbridge. It's a solid start for Billingham though, with 7 points out of a possible 10. If you know they only just about survived relegation by the skin of their teeth. Well, they're looking strong this season. That's a very nice return, and looking forward to seeing how they go this weekend against Otley, and then Sheffield victorious in the Steel City derby. But even that seemed like a very competitive match, and Anthony Poser's side will be relieved to have got through that derby, especially considering, like I mentioned at the start, Hull Ionians upsetting the form book against Hull.
Yeah, no, really good summary there, Ben, in terms of National 2 North. Yeah, I think we've got to mention that Hull Ionians Hull derby was in Tuesday's National League Rugby wrap-up as well. I mean, 55 points, I think it was in the end, Hull Ionians scored, didn't they? He scored some absolutely belting tries as well, going back through the footage. And I know Malik Holden is coming as a coach at Hull Ionians. People will know him, I think, from his Doncaster Knights days, his Hartbury days as well, a flying winger. And maybe he's put his stamp on some of the attacking rugby Hull Ionians are playing this season, because some of the tries they were scoring, they were really cutting Hull apart. But as you say, Ben, given sort of the struggles the club had last season, and even after the defeat they had on the open day at home to Lim, they would have been disappointed with that. So to go down the road to Hull and, you know, rack up a half century against their near neighbours will definitely give them confidence going forward.
Yeah, it's a fantastic appointment and a really good point made by yourself about Malik Holden. You know, he's a fantastic winger for Doncaster Knights and a real renowned attacking, you know, force. But you know, I mean that's they've turned a corner. I mean, obviously that result against Lim doesn't look too bad considering how on fire they are at the minute. But you know, it's great to see that they've come together. They've always said that even last season when they were struggling on that torrid losing run, they said they've got the players, the squad is there, just something wasn't right, something just wasn't clicking, and it seems now that, well, obviously clicked on Saturday thanks to Malik's attacking strategy, which scoring amazing tries, like you said. I mean, that's where you want to go out on a Saturday afternoon and watch some amazing rugby and amazing tries like the ones they scored at the weekend. So yeah, credit to them for turning things around, and look forward to seeing how they go this weekend as well. Can they back it up?
Yeah, Lewis Minikin very much the orchestra behind it all, pulling the strings for Hull Ionians in terms of the backs. And Kobe Fofi won National League 2 North's Player of the Week in the back row as well. So really good all-round performance from Hull Ionians. You mentioned Lim. It's very difficult to ignore Lim, given they also put 50 points on Chester. We talked about Chester last week, didn't we, Ben, in terms of they were hoping to be knocking on the door of those top places after moving back to National 2 North. But fabulous win for Adam Fletcher and Andy Davies' side. I know the halfback pairing and the report in the rugby paper highlighting Callum Morris and Tom Shard. We know Tom's a shrewd operator at this level. He was excellent last season for Lim and already putting his mark on this season. And I was reliably informed by Lim on Instagram on Sunday evening that they are the first team to have put 50 points on Chester at Chester since Caldy did it in 2019. And if we want to rewind the clock back, Caldy on that in that year, I think they won 25 out of 25 games before COVID put the season short, and they were on absolute fire. So really good start for them. And I think, Ben, given the fact that they were a newly promoted club last year and they, were edged themselves away from any relegation trouble, this would be a fantastic return for Adam Fletcher and Andy Davies' side, won't it?
Yeah, fantastic. They're like a real force in attack. They've shored up their defence as well. Yeah, they've set their mark on this season. I think last season was all about stability, consolidation, making sure you'd stay in the division, and now they can move forward. That kind of second season, have a bit more of a push. They've recruited well in the off season, and they look a real force at the start of this campaign. They've beaten some top sides that, like you mentioned, Chester were looking to finish sort of top 3, top 4 this season. Well, Lim absolutely blew them away. So they're already looking like a force and one to keep your eye out on, I think.
Yeah, definitely. And they are in the mix, Lim, at the moment with your likes of Wharfdales, your Leeds Tykes and your Sheffield, just to bring up the table now. 3 of the top 4 teams from last season are already up there. Ben, you've also mentioned Billingham, who are unbeaten so far. Really good return from them. But, we said it last week, didn't we, Ben? In terms of the usual suspects or our candidates to finish towards the top end of the table, to finish in that pole position, we're unsurprised, really, aren't we, to see Leeds Tykes, Sheffield and Wharfdale already occupying those sorts of positions.
Yes, we are in on one hand, but they haven't found it easy. I mean, Leeds Tykes and also Wharfdale have been pushed hard early on. So yeah, I mean, it also kind of shows that there are clear front runners in National 2 North, or people, certainly teams that from some recent history that you'd fancy to be up there. But I think every game is a real challenge, and you can't take anything for granted. I mean, Leeds will tell you that from last season. They do seem the standout side. I still believe that they are the best side in the division. Whether or not what that counts for, well, we'll see. But I'm looking forward to seeing how they go. I mean, Otley pushed them very, very hard, and probably will regret not going that one step further. Like you mentioned, Billingham look on a really good form. I think the rugby paper's focus this weekend will be Billingham against Otley, because that's just a really interesting tie, I think, because Billingham 7 points out of 10. They can make that 12 points. That's a fantastic return. Otley as well, a great win on the opening day, pushed Leeds Tykes really close. So that should be a really interesting match. Someone sees them have to unravel, but the other is going to have to take a massive step forward if they can pick up a win.
Yeah. Let's pull up those fixtures now, as Ben has nicely segued it into how it's going to look in front of us. Yeah, Billingham versus Otley, as Ben said, really intriguing game. And no disrespect to either side, but I'm not sure anyone would have said how intriguing this is. But both have been really strong in terms of the start of this season. Obviously, Billingham unbeaten, as Ben quite rightly touched on there. Otley, great win on the opening day against Hull. Push Leeds Tykes incredibly close last week, so it'll be a fascinating game up in the northeast. Elsewhere, Hull Ionians versus Chester. We've mentioned Hull Ionians a lot in the National 2 North chat. They'll be looking to take that confidence from their brilliant performance on Derby Day into that home game against Chester at Brantington Park. Leeds Tykes versus Hull. Hull will go to West Park. Leeds looking for a first victory of the campaign, looking to sort of not dwell too much on that Derby Day defeat to Hull Ionians. Lim versus Fylde. Of course, we touched on Lim there. Lim going for a 3rd straight win of the season. Around this time last year, they actually beat Fylde, albeit Fylde away from home. Can they get another victory over the Lancashire side? And they were to do that, wow, what a fantastic start to the season it would be for Adam Fletcher and Andy Davies' boys. Preston Grasshoppers versus Sheffield Tigers at Lightfoot Green. Heartbreak for Hoppers again last week, as Ben touched on. Jordan Dorrington, the former Preston man, breaking their hearts in the Lancashire derby. Obviously, Preston losing narrowly 32-30 on the opening day to Chester. Can they turn it around at home to a Sheffield Tigers side who are looking for the first points of the season. Sheffield versus Harrogate is at Aberdale Park. Sheffield's fantastic home record. They'll be looking to continue that against newly promoted Harrogate, who certainly put up a decent fight against Wharfdale in round 2. And speaking of Wharfdale, the Green Machine are at home to Tynedale in round 3, aiming for another maximum at the Avenue. So that is all your National 2 North fixtures going into round 3. Let's dive into National 2 East, shall we now, Ben? And in terms of sort of talking points from yourself, I know we highlighted a number of different games last week on the show. I know for your picture game in the rugby paper, you were at Dorking versus Barnes, I believe, and yet again, that fixture certainly delivered, didn't it?
Yeah, fantastic match. Those two definitely showing why they're sort of the two that have pipped for the promotion the most. Dorking will be obviously thrilled to have won that battle and just see off their rivals. It shows that how close it is between those two sides, with just such a narrow margin. And Tonbridge Juddians are looking very strong at the moment, victorious at Colchester's first game at this level. Colchester were competitive in parts, continuing to score a lot of points. At Tonbridge, one of the sides that have pipped for the title, that they sort of demonstrated their credentials with a real sort of forceful attacking display. Guernsey have just pipped Westcombe Park to the post in a real thriller. Again, one of those matches that I mentioned at the start that keeps surprising me how close these games are and how real sort of fine margins between these sides. Oxford Harlequins pushed hard, but were just beaten by Old Albanian. Both Old Albanian you expect to be up there in sort of top half this season. Oxford I think have been quite a impressive side since moving up the divisions, but haven't though. Have really shown have been the most impressive. Arguably certainly up there with Rotherham Titans as one of the most impressive promoted sides. They continue their impressive work with back-to-back wins, beating Worthing. Canterbury looking very strong, victorious away at Sevenoaks. Canterbury were one of the signs. I think it was Jacob Ford mentioned that he thinks that they'll be up there in the title mix. And Henley Hawks, well, speaking of Jacob Ford, Bury St Edmunds still yet to record that first win of the season. Henley, obviously, again another side that tip for a title contender. There's just so many National 2 East that it really is wide open. Bury will be disappointed not to have picked up a win yet, and we're hoping to address that. Or they have had 2 matches on the road so far, so that back at home, their first game of the season next weekend, where they'll really expect to get a win on the board and then build from there. But yeah, really interesting stuff across the board at National 2 East. Like I said, so many sides that you fancy to be in the mix for the title. It'd be enthralling to see how it all plays out.
It's going to be really, really interesting. I think we'll have a look at the table shortly, but it is really interesting to see the structure of the table at the moment. Barnes and Dorking, 2nd and 3rd last year. They both won 1 game apiece. Obviously, they played each other at the weekend, but, not a 100% start for either of those sides. You did mention Tonbridge Juddians at the top, a really, really strong start to the season for them. Curtis Barnes, yet again, the man in the spotlight. Another hat-trick for him to start the season against a much improved Colchester side. I know they took a lot of plus points, actually, Colchester, from that game against Tonbridge Juddians at 48-26 defeat. But yeah, TJ's looking very strong in the opening stages of this campaign. You mentioned Canterbury as well there, Ben. Last season, they sort of progressed in a really good way to finish. I think it was 7th in the end, so it was definitely a step forward, but they are seemingly taking strides forward in the opening 2 rounds of the season. A great Kent Derby victory over Sevenoaks, 27-14 win. I believe Saracens' Ben Earl was watching on. We know he has connections with Sevenoaks, but he would not have had the smiles on the faces in that Kent Derby. It would have been those of Canterbury wearing those smiles. So great win for Canterbury. But I was thinking about this actually, Ben, on Saturday evening up there alongside Canterbury, who we just talked about, and Tonbridge Juddians, which you mentioned, are Guernsey Raiders. And they picked up 2 wins from 2. They are 10 points from 10. And having been lucky enough to visit Guernsey last year, speaking to Director of Rugby Jordan Reynolds, he was basically saying that, they want to be a top half team. They want to be knocking on the door of the top 6. And I think crucial to that is going to be their home form at Foots Lane. So to have beaten Worthing and Westcombe Park is a really strong start for Guernsey Raiders, and they'll be hoping to build on that going into round 3. So just to pull up the table in front of me, in terms of Canterbury, Tonbridge Juddians and Guernsey, 2 wins from 2. Maximum Halls for all three of those sides. They'll be looking to continue that going into round three. Ben quite rightly mentioned Havant, the newly promoted side, who we featured in round one with Rob Matthews and Will Knight. 2 wins for them. Couldn't have asked for a better start to life back in level 4, back in National 2. And Henley Hawks as well, Luke Allen's side, rounding off those teams who have picked up 2 wins from 2 to begin the campaign. So yeah, really strong start for all 5 of those sides going into round 3. So speaking of round 3, Ben, what kind of stands out for you in terms of the fixtures this week? Where will the rugby paper be heading to cover in National 2 East?
Yeah, there's some intriguing matchups, obviously in each. So they're very difficult to call, I think. But I think the one that I've gone for is Havant against Guernsey. Guernsey, obviously Pippin Westcombe Park last weekend to the post. They just need to win there, 2 from 2 at home. How can they go on the road? That's the question. And Havant are absolutely flying. I mean, back to back wins. They couldn't have dreamt of a better start. Can that continue at home to Guernsey? Well, I think they'll probably fancy their chances in that match. So that for me is the standout fixture, but some good matches across the board and a lot of teams with points to prove.
Yeah, I know when we had Rob Matthews of Havant on the show in the first week, he mentioned they had that winning song, don't they, Havant, coming up the hill. So to have had a rendition of that twice already this season would have pleased those of a Havant persuasion. Yeah, really good game to highlight, Ben. As we said, winning starts for both of those clubs going into round 3. So let's just have a look at the other fixtures. Barnes versus Colchester. We touched on Colchester. Certainly an improvement on last week. Barnes involved in another thrilling game against Dorking, back at home this weekend to welcome the newly promoted side. Bury St Edmunds against Oxford Harlequins, sort of Ben mentioned before, so 2 bonus points for Oxford Harlequins last weekend against Old Albanian in that 38-32 defeat. Bury hoping to get off the mark in their home outing on Saturday afternoon. Canterbury versus Worthing. Canterbury, the early league leaders, scoring tries and points for fun at the moment, and they will be looking certainly, and they'll be hot favourites actually to make it 3 wins from 3 at the weekend. Havant versus Guernsey, Ben's really nicely summed up there. Old Albanian versus Dorking as well at Woolhams. That will be a really interesting game. Dorking looking to back up last weekend's win over Barnes. Tunbridge Julians versus Sevenoaks is another Kent derby for us to sink our teeth into. Contrasting fortunes of both sides at the moment. Sevenoaks the only side without a point in National 2 East, so they'll be looking to open their account this weekend. And Westcombe Park versus Henley to round things off. Henley looking for a 3rd win on the bounce, but Westcombe Park never an easy place to go, especially with Westcombe Park winning against Bury St Edmunds on the opening day of the season, so it won't be an easy one for Hawks, that one on Saturday afternoon. So Ben, let's just finally look at National 2 West, shall we? So in terms of round 2, what were the kind of talking points, the main things that stood out for you? Again, similar to National 2 East and National 2 North, there were a lot of kind of sort of surprising results, some eye-catching results and some eye-catching names as well.
Absolutely. It's some really good matches across the board, and like those 2 sides that I kind of fancied that came down from National 1 into National 2 West. Well, they're fighting amongst it. Because the league is just so strong, they're finding it difficult to get those wins on the board. So I mean, that kind of it shows how great the league is. Like we mentioned at the start, massive crowd of 2,478 at Red Roof, but Camborne continue to prove worthy since their promotion last season. They've really settled into that league and are looking really strong. Number 8, Jake Holcomb, hat-trick for Clifton, beating Old Red Cliffians. That was Old Reds have impressed certainly towards the end of last season, the start of this season. So that's a really impressive result there for Clifton. And Jack Bracken, the England under-20s World Cup winner, what a start to his life in the National League. A hat-trick of tries on his debut to beat Hinckley, who are kind of surprised. They've started very slowly this season, which is a little bit alarming for them. Exeter University in red hot form. Devonport Services no match, it seems. Taunton Titans are on the board now in National 2 West with a solid win over Hornets, and Macclesfield got their first win on a very special day for the club. They marked their 5-year hiatus from the National League. They're back in the big time now, and their 150th club anniversary as well. So a very special season this year for Mac. And Luctonians, obviously runners up last year, they just edged Cinderford in the first ever meeting between the two sides, which I was quite surprised to read about. So yeah, very, very competitive across the board. Yeah, Cinderford seem like they're struggling since their demotion, which is interesting to see, given that you probably would have fancied them to be in amongst it at the top. Still very early days though, and I'm sure that they'll be able to turn their fortunes around.
Yeah, I think there was probably a little bit of disappointment and frustration for Cinderford at the weekend. Only a narrow defeat to Luctonians 15-13. The fine margins going the way of Luctonians in that one. So they'll be looking to bounce back as quickly as they can, will Cinderford. But yeah, Luctonians, fabulous start to the season for them. You know, going to Hinckley, never an easy thing. Got a 27-17 victory in round one. And as we touched on there, going to Cinderford and getting a win. We know Cinderford will the bound to improve as the season goes on. So going there and getting a victory already is definitely a big tick in the box for Ryan Watkins' side. And I know we've mentioned it a couple of times that Luctonians are very wary of talking about any sort of race for the title or being in the hunt for promotion. But when they have results like that, two away results to start the season, it's very difficult to ignore them, isn't it, Ben?
Yeah, they're finding ways to win, which is so important. I mean, they're scrapping away and winning those games is huge. And I'm sure I know that they like to play it down and to say that it's all about that, you know, the club moving forward and we're not rushing to get promotion. But I mean, once they get back into the mix again this year, they'll be fancied, and that'll be their goal will be to win all the games that they can and hopefully end up the top of the tree. Like they said that they were so close last year, and they only need to go one step further, and they'll be in international one. So yeah, I think they'll be definitely in the mix. There's a lot of good sides though. I think that the two student sides, Loughborough Students and Exeter University, they're looking really good. I mean, Loughborough at home especially are scoring points for fun on their 4G pitch. They've got such a great attacking side that they're definitely one to sort of fear. I think for the sides going there. We've seen what Hinckley are really well respected across the league, but well they were no match at all for Loughborough. So yeah, it's all about balancing the Bucks Super Rugby and obviously national leagues for both those two sides. If they can get the mix right, then they'll be up there competing as well. And I expect to see Taunton to build from that solid win over Hornets. I think they'll probably build from there and hope to compete at the top. So yeah, again, so many sides. It's crazy how unpredictable this division is. That it's really exciting to see. Yeah, I really don't know where it goes from here. But again, similar to National 2 East, there's just so many contenders that you struggle to see, you know, how each side's kind of season pans out.
It's very difficult to call this early on, as you say, Ben. But yeah, Loughborough currently leading the way. I'll get the table brought up in front of us now. But Loughborough leading away with 2 wins from 2. Ben mentioned the scoring points of fun. 83 points they've scored in the first 2 games of the season. Camborne also enjoying themselves. 95 points they've scored in the first 2 games, running in 6 tries against Red Roof at the weekend. And as Ben said, fabulous crowd at the recreation grounds. But they weren't happy, the home supporters. It was Camborne who took the spoils last Saturday. So they are also on 10 points. Luctonians, 2 wins from 2 on 8 points, but 2 very hard-fought notable victories for Ryan Watkins' side. And as Ben mentioned, Exeter University in 4th place, still unbeaten. That draw with Clifton in round 1 and that excellent win against Devonport Services in round 2. So those are the top 4 sides. Clifton also unbeaten in 5th position as well. So really intriguing to see how it all pans out going into round 3, Ben. So where is the standout fixture for you this weekend, looking at the 7 games that we've got in front of us in National 2 West?
Yeah, I think I've probably found this one the hardest to call which one would be the standout. So I've gone for 2, which is a sort of cheating.
We did that last week as well, Ben.
But it shows how great this league is. That it really is impossible to. Yeah, I'm gonna have to probably narrow. I'm always gonna have to narrow it down to one. We'll
No,
have
you can mention 2. You can mention 2.
But I'm going to go for Hinckley against Cinderford. Obviously, both sides yet to get going. Someone's season's fortunes have to change. Something has to give there. Been a little bit disappointed with Cinderford since coming down, and Hinckley have yet to get going. Where both sides would have been talked about a lot during pre-season as being, you know, title contenders. Someone's going to be able to get it going there. And then the other one is Camborne against Taunton Titans. Camborne maximum points, really impressive. You know, Derby Day victory last weekend. they'll be full of confidence. And Taunton got their first win on the board. You'd expect with the caliber of their signings that they'd want to be in the mix. That's, well, going away to Camborne will be a real sort of test of what they're made of. Even after going into round 3, you'd argue that's already a kind of a litmus test to see what are Taunton made of? Are they going to kind of sort of underwhelm this season, or are they going to be in the mix? I think that's going to be really interesting to go for that. So yeah, don't know out the two at the moment. I'll have to decide later on in the week which one will be the paper's focus.
Yeah, no, definitely agree with both of those games, Ben, in terms of standout fixtures. I think Luctonians Clifton looks pretty good as well. We'll just pull up the fixtures now. And just in terms of Camborne versus Taunton, in fact, we'll start with Bourneville versus Redruthers. That is the first fixture which appears on your screens. Bourneville back at home after nearly completing a great escape, against Macclesfield last Saturday afternoon. They were 31-7 down in Cheshire, nearly completed a revival, but they came up short. So they're back at home this weekend, looking to get the better of Redruth. Camborne versus Taunton, Ben's already highlighted, and rightly so. Should be an absolutely cracking game, this one. Stars are plenty on show, including Josh Matavesi, who won National 2 West's Player of the Week this week. He was brilliant for Camborne in their victory over Redruth. Turnovers, tries, passes, carries. Fantastic performance by Matavesi, and Camborne will be looking to make it 3 wins from 3 when they welcome Taunton, who got off the mark against Hornets in round 2. Macclesfield going to Exeter University, another long trip for Mac at the start of the season. But I tell you what, Matt Coldridge, the director of rugby, and Rhys Davis, the head coach, will be pretty pleased with the Blues' return so far. 6 points from their opening 2 games, and they'll be looking to add to that tally when they travel to an unbeaten Exeter University on Saturday. Hinckley versus Cinderford's another game which Ben touched on. Something has got to give at Leicester Road on Saturday. These two teams will want to kickstart their campaigns, but which one will it be? Will it be host Hinckley or visitors Cinderford there? Hornets versus Loughborough is a 3 p.m. kickoff up the Nest, and like Loughborough, Hornets also play on an artificial pitch, so I don't want to tempt fate here, and you can blame me if there isn't, but expect free-flowing rugby and plenty of tries scored from these sides. Hornets did love to throw the ball around last season at home, and I expect no different against an on-fire Loughborough student side at the moment. Luctonians versus Clifton was the game that I highlighted previously. Luctonians' great start to the season, but if they were in a title race last term, this might have been the game where it all became undone. They lost 10-8 at home to Clifton at Mortimer Park, so will Luctonians be able to pass the test on Saturday against an unbeaten Clifton? And Old Reds versus Devonport is where we finish off, with Old Reds looking to continue their fantastic home record, which goes back into last season. Ben, that is everything wrapped up, hopefully neatly and tidily for going into round 3 at the weekend. Looking forward to another excellent weekend of rugby. So in terms of the National League Rugby Preview Show, please continue to like these videos, subscribe to the channel, share with whoever you like. It all goes to boosting what we are doing here in terms of National League Rugby's media team. As I said at the start, we really appreciate the feedback. We're not ignoring you. We're not, we've had a lot of emails, a lot of comments as well. We are taking everything on board, and hopefully we can continue to bring some of the best coverage we can of National 1 and National 2. Do check out Talking Rugby Union as well for all the latest National League Rugby news. Do visit our website ncarugby.com for the tables, the results, all the latest previews and reviews. And last but not least, please also check out the rugby paper. Ben, what's the link for people to subscribe, or they can do it the old-fashioned way and pop into the newsagents on a Sunday morning and pick up a copy of the paper?
Yes, yeah. The rugbypaper.co.uk/subscriptions is the best way to get the online edition every week, or of course the print edition sent to your house every Sunday. Or yeah, like Chris said, pop into your local newsagents or big supermarket, and you'll be able to see grab a copy whilst you're there.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is fantastic coverage on a Sunday morning as well as the National League Rugby website. So do make sure you subscribe to the rugby paper as well. And also follow Ben at Ben_Jaycock on X. And just remind us of the rugby papers handle as well, Ben.
Yeah, it's just at the rugby paper, and you'll find rugby paper straight away on X.
Yeah, Brilliant, brilliant. I know it's going to be an incredibly busy week for Ben, so we've taken up a lot of his time at the start of the Premiership as well this weekend. But enough about the top flight of rugby for now. Make sure you get down to your local National League Rugby club on Saturday afternoon. It's going to be a fantastic weekend, as me and myself and Ben have discussed. Ben, thanks so much for your time. Really appreciate you coming on again, mate. And let's look forward to yet another weekend of brilliant National League Rugby.